Hey, everybody, it's Natalie Bencivenga, and welcome to another edition of Facts Over Fear. You guys, there is so much happening. The level of chaos that we are all experiencing is almost overwhelming. And so who better to be in this hellish timeline with me than my friend, Jess Britvich. Jess, thanks so much for being here.
Of course. Who better to be overwhelmed with than me, who's always overwhelmed anyway?
Yes, let's just crawl into the fetal position together.
Perfect.
But we can't. There's too much to talk about. And you guys, we're going to hit some really big ones today because I don't know if you guys know, but there's a lot going on at the airports. I think that's been the headline of the week. We're going to talk a little bit about the TSA chaos, how ABC has turned on The Bachelorette, and Trump's attacks against Robert Mueller. You might be asking yourself, well, these feel random, but actually, it's really all about accountability. Who's getting held accountable and who's getting a pass? We're going to break down the gap between political power and public consequences from Trump to everyday people. So let's just get right into it because I wanted to kick things off with a story around the TSA stuff that people may not have heard because this is a new component. Delta Airlines says Congress is suspending its special service desk for members until TSA is fully funded. So they're doing this. This is coming from the Hill. They said just days after the Senate moved to end lawmakers' ability to skip the TSA lines, this was long a symbol of preferential treatment. Now, even at the world's busiest airports in, let's say, Atlanta, Georgia, travelers are being told to arrive up to 4 hours early as staffing shortages worsen, and Congress people will no longer be able to skip ahead. So with TSA agents going unpaid since mid-February, they're actually starting like food banks specifically for the agents, which is wild. Hundreds are already quitting or quiet quitting. The bigger question is clear. When the system is strained, who still gets specials treatment and who doesn't? So what are your thoughts on Delta very publicly saying no longer would Congress get these special treatment?
Boo-hoo. Good.
Yeah.
Go stand in a 4-hour line with the rest of us and look at ICE agents standing around twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing while you're paying them, and then have these poor TSA agents going without money since February, and then the ones who are there are just completely slammed. This is a minor consequence compared to like the larger systems we have at play and the larger consequence. Good. Feel it.
Feeling it. Listen, Joanna says that's great news. I agree, Joanna. And what I would add to that, Jess, is I think what we're going to start seeing are the airlines getting angry and impatient because they're going to be losing money. And let's be real.
And that's
the bottom line.
That's a thread in a couple of our stories today. That's what it all comes down to, especially when we're talking about corporations.
That's right. And what's interesting, I was doing a video on connecting some dots between TSA, ICE, and Project 2025 yesterday on my Instagram. And something that had sort of left my brain and then came back was the realization of how TSA was originally created, which of course was under the Bush administration in response to 9/11. Prior to that, there really wasn't a federal stranglehold on, airport security. Right. And so I remember the days I was in high school when 9/11 happened. I remember when you would fly and it was like such a chill process prior to 9/11. And then after it became, everybody was so hypervigilant. Everybody was so scared. Everybody to this day still has to take their shoes off, all of these things. And I find it really rich that the Republicans were the ones charging forward to have TSA under sort of government jurisdiction. And now they're the ones refusing to fund it. Trump is refusing to fund it until his SAVE Act can be put back in the spotlight. So, Jess, it's just like, who's getting held accountable here and who isn't? And so it was nice to see Delta doing something.
And, before we give Delta too much props, I know they're also under fire because yesterday Rachel Maddow on her show, I believe, made some connections about their complicity in some flights of individuals to detention camps. So, I mean, I don't want to give them too many props here but it's nice to see that hopefully, I don't know, the last thing you need to see is these politicians strolling right up to the line whenever everybody's waiting in these insane lines. So, I mean, you know.
Well, and I
Crazy.
think the reality too is, to your point, like, once again, it's not like Delta has this conscience. I really think it's because it's going to impact people's, you know, shareholders,
100%.
like quarter agreement, you know, like it's just coming down to money. And this is also just to the point where I think we have to start to ask ourselves, to what end? Like, at what point are people going to realize, like, we don't want to see the military or military-esque people showing up in every aspect of public life in America.
Right. Absolutely. And that's what I was thinking too whenever I was thinking over the stories for this show. Life is just worse. And aren't we all feeling that? I mean, I don't even think that's coming from obviously we know where we stand politically, but I think just those everyday things that you don't necessarily think are political, but very much are tied to politics, like TSA lines, like higher gas prices, higher electricity bills, like all of these things that are hitting people who don't even necessarily want to engage in thinking about how this is political, which it is. Aren't we all feeling squeezed from doesn't everything feel so much harder in such a short period of time?
It does.
Aren't we exhausted? I'm exhausted.
I could lay down right now. I could
tell me about it.
I could just take a little anxiety nap, you know, just float off into an unsettled dream space. Oh yeah, it would be a whole situation. And it just seems to me like the person at the top here, Trump, it's like Teflon, like nothing sticks to him, nothing seems to bother him, nothing seems to matter. And at what point, I guess, is this going to get to a place where Congress finally does do something? And really, to hit that point home, there's been a lot happening in sort of the pop culture world that sort of fits right into this, because when you see a bachelorette facing more consequences than a sitting president, I mean, you just have to ask yourself, is this system broken, or is this working like exactly how it's designed?
The sanctity of the seat of the Bachelorette, you know, it's But to catch everybody up, the new season of The Bachelorette was filmed, finished, and ready to air this past Sunday until it wasn't. So Disney pulled the plug after a video surfaced from TMZ showing would-be lead Taylor Frankie Paul, also star of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, in a physical altercation with her then boyfriend from 2023. In a statement, the company said that it's pausing the season and shifting focus to the family involved. And just like that, a multi-million-dollar show was shelved overnight. So this has sparked a lot of discourse. I guess my two questions for you, Natalie, before we kind of dive into this discussion. Are you a Secret Lives of Mormon Wives fan? Have you watched the show?
Of course.
Of course.
I love Bravo. I love
all of it.
I love it all. I need it. Jess.
That's why we're kismet. I know.
Yes, this isn't a want. This is, how do I stay sane in an insane world? It's I watch people that are more insane than me.
Yes.
And then I go, okay, I'm okay. I can move on now.
And the crazy, and then, well, I guess I'll get to the second question. Did you watch the TMZ video of this altercation?
So no, and I usually choose not to when presented with the opportunity to watch that kind of stuff, because I don't see the value in that for me. I read about it. I know that it had been out there. I know that she's had, domestic intimate partner violence accusations, and in the past towards her. I know that she went through the legal system and the legal process. She was still on probation, I think, from that incident. But I think where I got confused was when it was released, because I hadn't read about it until pretty recently, meaning in the last day or two. I didn't realize it was an old video. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting that she's being held accountable almost again for something that she already went through the legal process
for. And
that was weird to me.
Yes. And for those who maybe aren't as up on the reality TV as me and Natalie, the very first episode, the pilot episode of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, this is the cliffhanger. It showcases not this video. We didn't see this video, and I did watch the video, and I will say it's very horrific. It's a very, very hard watch. So it's going to elicit a lot of emotional reactions, and there is a child involved. So that, I think, But it's not like ABC didn't know about this. And I think they really kind of exploited this event As for Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, they show the police body cam footage of the aftermath of this event. That she talks about her probation. She's done multiple interviews about it. And so it's something that was very well known, and they kind of were, I believe, looking for that type of just personality that makes her good reality TV, and looking to exploit that until it kind of came back to bite them. And as you kind of brought up at the top, what's so frustrating is kind of the selective outrage. I'm not condoning anything going on in that video. Like I said, very difficult watch. It's very clear that their relationship's very toxic, very abusive, I think, on, whatever. But we have a sitting president in the Epstein files.
Oh, not mentioned once, honey.
Yeah.
Mentioned tens of thousands of times.
And not that I am shocked, because I swear we could do something like this every video. We knew that this was how this was going to be whenever Billy Bush was fired from the third hour of the Today Show.
Listen.
Once again, holding up the sanctity of the third hour of the Today Show over the president from being in the same grab him by the you-know-what video back in 2016 or whatever this was.
And I think what really disturbs me about all of this is, once again, the accountability factor, connecting those dots of who's paying the price and who isn't. And we see with the Epstein files that Ghislaine Maxwell is the only one really currently in jail. We see now that Taylor Frankie Paul lost her deal with ABC and is probably going to lose a lot of other endorsement deals. The season of The Mormon Wives is on pause right now. The other women aren't sure what to do. I also find that kind of interesting because they all filmed with her
up until this
point. And this, once again, was not hidden knowledge. So it feels like she's low-hanging fruit. But, I mean, there is this, petty bitch that lives inside of me.
Please, let her
And
leave.
she's coming out. And I have to say, I don't feel that much sympathy for Miss Taylor, who is also a well-known MAGA supporter.
Yeah.
So it's listen, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but
if this is how it's going to go down, this is how it's going to go down.
Sorry. That's just where I'm at.
Yeah, but I think it also goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how these corporations don't have values. ABC doesn't care about this. And I think a clearer one-to-one example than even the president, because God, that's a whole other can of worms. But ABC still airs football. How many of those guys have DV accusations against them? And worse, baseball, all that kind of stuff. And it ultimately just comes down to the money. And I really feel like they were fine exploiting this situation until they started to get the public backlash. And then they just kind of succumb to it. So
I agree. And I will say this too. I was hearing, when I was doing sort of my investigative deep dive on this topic, that I guess this season was kind of a mess from start to finish. And the fact that immediately following the release of the soon-to-be release of the show, she was already sort of in this wheelhouse of Back with Dakota, which is the toxic ex that we've been referring to. And so they were sort of like, well, she's not even pretending that this new guy is the new fiance. So perhaps they were worried that the ratings were going to be in the tank because she wasn't playing along. But if you take the route of Bethany Frankel, who also commented on, listen, we're looking at it from all sides, all perspectives, all angles, guys, on this one. Bethany Frankel was sort of like, The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, this is a specific type of reality show. This is sort of the dumpster fire kind of show. Why did you think having a dumpster fire persona wasn't going to lead to a forest fire, basically?
Because I think that's almost what they wanted. I feel, and I mean, I don't know, I'm not in these rooms, but I almost feel like it was an attempt at a rebrand because everybody knows that The Bachelor and Bachelorette doesn't work. How many of them have actually ended up with their suitor? Two or something like that.
Right.
Maybe. And so I think they were trying to pivot to let's see if we could lean into the heavy drama, the heavy, the things that she already brings with her. And I think that's what they wanted. And so you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes.
We're really on it today, you guys. Just to round this out, because once again, I just love this topic so much. I was listening to this one woman. She does out of the box PR stuff, and she was saying listen, guys, Bachelor's dead, Bachelorette's dead. What we should do is make it more of an American Idol style show. And I was like, tell me more. And she was just like, you could have a panel of judges that are friends of the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, and maybe like an executive from ABC, and they pick all around the country. They go from city to city, and people would audition like American Idol style. And I was like, that seems like a way better
At
idea.
First, it was almost giving a little bit of like Love Island. Do you do Love Island?
No, that's the only one I don't do.
We'll talk.
Oh, God. I'm embarrassed, guys. This is sad.
They kind of, you can vote in and stuff on like that. So
bringing that in.
It is the frustrating case of the hypocrisy that we continue to see, how men are obviously held to a different standard than women. Not saying that they should have aired this season, not saying that they didn't do the right thing, but they continue to air other things is all I'm saying,
No,
and
I agree.
Once again, comes down to this idea that hypocrisy is the point. It's that double standard that allows them to consolidate power, which kind of leads us into another conversation around fireable offenses for some and not for others. So, Natalie, what did Trump post on Truth Social earlier this week?
What hasn't he posted? So let's
let me narrow down.
That man is up at 3 a.m. posting. No, but there was really one that caught both of our attention and the attention of a lot of people, because for years we know that President Trump has made controversial, horrific, often very untrue remarks about people, especially after their deaths, often targeting political opponents. But this time, it has really escalated to a new level of disgusting. He openly celebrated the death of former FBI Director Robert Mueller, and he wrote, "Good, I'm glad he's dead." Now, Mueller, if you don't know, led the Russia investigation into Trump's 2016 campaign. He was once at the center of one of the most consequential probes of his presidency, making the comment not just personal, but obviously very deeply political as well. So I guess the thing is here, and this was why I really wanted to touch on this with you, honey, because you have sort of a personal connection. Why is it that Trump can get away with saying something like this after someone dies, but people lost their jobs, their livelihoods, when calling out the hypocrisy of critiquing Charlie Kirk's role in American media following his death? Jess, you know a thing or two about that.
I do, because I was about 6 months ago, right after Charlie Kirk was killed, I made a post called a eulogy for Charlie Kirk, and which I still very much stand by. It's still pinned at the top of my Instagram and TikTok if you want to go check it out. Really not making light of his death at all, actually very much sitting in the gravity of the situation, but pointing out how the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk pushed, but Turning Point USA continues to push, white supremacy, patriarchy, white Christian nationalism, leads to political violence. It always has. And that is the fabric of America. So, I kind of pointed that out, I think pretty eloquently. And I was fired from my job for that video. And I have been reflecting on this for the past, I'm still not over it. It's like getting fired was a very positive thing for me personally, but I still have a lot of anger because of what that firing represents on a larger scale. In this past situation, kind of reflecting on just not me, but over 600 people, I think they said, were fired for reposts, some just reposting things that Charlie Kirk said, and just all across the board. Some a bit more disparaging, some completely, like I said, literally just using Charlie Kirk's words, some more analysis like me, kind of anything you said across the board. And what I've really come to the conclusion of was that we were not fired for the words that we said. I think very few of these companies had genuine outrage over the words that we said. What we were fired for was speaking out against the regime.
Yeah.
The Trump regime won, but even larger than that, in my case, I think white supremacy, patriarchy, Christian nationalism, these larger systems. And whenever you're working in some of these companies, where the company I worked in was a very white, male-dominated company, people don't like to hear that, and it still makes me really angry, though, because of, like I said, this hypocrisy that we're seeing, the idea that I know someone could easily retweet this post that Trump said about Robert Mueller, and I'm sure still will have their job. And I find that just extremely scary and extremely frustrating. So I don't know. What emotions did this bring up for you, Natalie?
Yeah. Before I get to my emotions, I want to comment that Joanna says that she is proud of you for speaking out. So just to take that in,
No
there's a
regrets.
lot of
I have zero regrets. And I doubled down in that firing meeting. You trust, but yeah.
No, when you told me this story, when the first time we had coffee and you shared with me, I think it was the first time we were together, that you had been fired. I was so enraged for you because of everything you just said, because of the level of hypocrisy, and also taking us all the way back to the beginning of this conversation around accountability. We have somebody in power that is literally his actions, his choices, and the regime under him are actually killing Americans, are harming Americans, are destroying the livelihoods of Americans, are stripping Americans of their health care. I could go on and on and on. And there's zipola in terms of the consequences. But you and other people who were literally exercising your right to free speech. You were not at your place of work when you made these comments.
To make
You
that
were
clear,
you were not in a pub, or excuse me, you were not in a private setting. You were on social media, a public forum, in the capacity as a person who speaks to these issues. You said what you said. You do not have there was nothing in your contract at work that said you weren't
no.
allowed to have an account and talk about things. So all of this stuff to me is just, once again, when we're talking about who's held accountable, it's always, hate speech is allowed as long
Oh,
as it's
yeah.
hating certain people,
Of course. That's
right?
like we're already marginalized. Of course.
Yes. And so it's always bullying tactics. And I think that's what my visceral reaction was when I saw Trump, saying this stuff against Mueller, and then starting to think about how other people were, chastised and punished for speaking out against Charlie Kirk. It's like this selective propriety too. This idea, you'll go online and people say, oh, we shouldn't speak ill of the dead. But in the next breath, they're laughing when, someone dies that they don't like. And I don't like the hypocrisy of it.
And
I just don't.
I know. And I get really frustrated too on the, I don't know, moral high ground that certain people think they have, like around,
Yes.
oh, you can't speak ill about this. He was a husband and a whatever, a husband and a father or whatever. Whenever you're voting for policies that are separating husbands and fathers from their families, whenever you're voting for policies that are, like we said, really killing people, that are allowing the molestation of children, like, what are you talking about? And that's what I get really frustrated at, is people are so, like, we need to look at the larger picture here.
Yeah.
And that's what I was really trying to call out, is the larger implications of Turning Point USA. And I continue to do. And I think it makes people uncomfortable, and it makes people look at, like, especially white people, especially white men, but white women as well, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at how we are complicit in these systems. And it's just so much easier for people to kind of like pretend like they have the moral high ground and being like, oh, well, you can't say this or whatever. And it does absolutely nothing. It's very frustrating.
It's very frustrating. And I think, what bothers me about white fragility in particular is how quick it can be weaponized against themselves, and they don't see it. They don't see how they're being played. They don't see that they're a pawn in a system that is just as oppressive and violent to them as it is to everyone else, because in their minds, they think this facade is going to protect them, when in fact, they're just as much at risk of all the things that we were just talking about, of not having health care, of not having a living wage, of not having clean air or clean water as everyone else. But they use this idea of whiteness as this false sense of protection. And it makes me so angry, because you are being lied to. If you would stand in solidarity with the rest of us, meaning white allies and people of color, I think we could change everything. And that's what they're scared of, which is why they continue to perpetuate these false narratives around this fake sense of superiority, which goes way back. I mean, this isn't.
I know. Oh gosh, I know. Go on and on about that forever. But I think it also brings up, working class solidarity as well, too. And what's frustrating is I was doxxed, and that's really kind of what
scary
led to the firing is I had a lot of people calling my workplace. I had people, whatever, coming to my DM, say, crazy, crazy stuff. And it only, knock on wood, only lasted those couple of days, and then, the news cycle continues. And that's what was really frustrating about my job is because they really liked me too. And I think they made this decision very hastily and,
fear-based.
Exactly. It's complying in advance. It's, we could talk about, I'm going off my original point, but.
No, that's true too.
But, which also really scares me. But, what frustrates me too about these people who are trying to dox, and they went on this whole campaign to get people who talked about Charlie Kirk fired from their jobs. People made TikTok accounts, literally going and searching for people. They skyrocketed to almost 1 million followers overnight, just trying to dox people and call people out, investigate their employers and say call this person's employer. There was this Charlie's Murder site that compiled people's information, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, how are you guys riding so hard for this individual person trying to get people fired, not from their jobs, but you're trying to get them to lose their livelihoods and you're trying to get them to lose their healthcare, which is really, I think, I have a whole other issue with healthcare tied to employment and, all that other kind of stuff that we can talk about, benefits, that kind of stuff. Why are you riding so hard for this whenever we could be coming together to work for a better equitable society for ourselves? Imagine if you put that energy towards going after actual employers.
Right. I know.
It's wild to me.
It's wild. It's sad. It's frustrating. And it goes back to this idea of fascists. They are the bootlicking is a real thing. There's this idea of proximity to power that if they engage in the system, like you said, and comply in advance, they'll somehow be protected. And God knows we have enough history books filled with reasons as to why that doesn't happen. And we could talk about that for a whole other half an hour and more. But in the interest of time, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I appreciate everybody that tuned in live. If you came late, don't worry. This is going to go up on Substack, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube here tonight and in the coming days. Please make sure to follow Jess and I, subscribe to our Substack so we can do this more often because we're really having a good time doing it. Jess, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. And excited for the next time.
Absolutely. And as always, everyone, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, everybody.